You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is my review for The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Now, before we get into this review, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my latest videos. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is a 2023 fantasy adventure film from director Francis Lawrence that serves as a prequel to the iconic Hunger Games franchise. Years before he becomes the tyrannical president of Panem, 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow remains the last hope for his fading lineage. With the 10th annual Hunger Games fast approaching, Snow is alarmed when he is assigned to mentor Lucy. With the 10th annual Hunger Games fast approaching, Snow is alarmed to find out he will be mentoring Lucy Greybeard from District 12 in the games. Uniting their instincts for political savvy and showmanship, they race against time to unveil who is ultimately the songbird and the snake. The film stars Tom Blythe, Rachel Zegler, Peter Dinklage, Hunter Schafer, and Viola Davis. So I am someone who really enjoys the Hunger Games films, and I've never read any of the books, but I do enjoy all of the films, honestly. I know a lot of people rag on 3 and 4, splitting up that last book into two separate films. And while I think they're certainly the worst two of the original 4-part film series, I still enjoy both Mockingjay films, and I absolutely adore Catching Fire and the first Hunger Games. However, when I heard we were getting a prequel that was centered on President Snow, my only question really was why? I guess. And the trailers also didn't do much to sell me. But I was hopeful. I was hearing positive reviews out of the earliest of screenings. But ultimately, I left feeling pretty much the same way I did upon entering that movie theater. Yeah, my top two suspicions turned out to be right. One, Viola Davis steals the entire show. And two, it's kind of pointless. I didn't need a President Snow prequel movie. Sorry, y'all. It's a solid film, but it just doesn't feel necessary. So let's go ahead and talk about the positives first. Well, let's kick things off with Ms. Viola Davis herself, since I already kind of spoiled one of my positives in that lead in. She's amazing. Ms. Davis is chewing that scenery up each and every time she is on the screen. She is performing to the back of the house, and it works fabulously. I loved her look. I loved her mannerisms. Everything about Viola Davis's character was amazing, and she served as this delightful evil mastermind behind everything happening in this film. I also thought Rachel Zegler was really good as Lucy Gray here. It was really nice that she got to show off her singing skills once more because she has a stunning voice and she sounded amazing throughout the film. No offense to Jennifer Lawrence, but it sure was nice to get the hanging tree by someone who actually sings. But more than that, she is effortlessly charming and endearing to the audience. You can see why everyone fell head over heels for this girl entering the games. I thought Tom Blythe was also very good in the film, as was Peter Dinklage. Really, there wasn't a bad performance amongst the bunch for me personally. I also thought the original score from James Newton Howard, top tier. It was amazing. But what else do we expect? The cinematography was also beautiful. And when the film leans into what we know best from the Hunger Games, it works best. When it's really dealing with the allegories and the classism, that's when it is shining. When it's giving us classic Hunger Games, that's when this film also shines the most, which I think was true in the original films as well, and why the two Mockingjay films just aren't as strong, because they veer off what the entire concept gets so right. So when we have those first two acts specifically, it's definitely much more exciting. You're involved, you're invested in what's happening in the games, and in many ways it pales back to our real world because those are the most exciting parts of the film. They kind of show why people tune into the Hunger Games in universe. Now, I don't think the games or anything to do with them is as strong as the original, including the messaging behind them, because it's all a lot more heavy handed here. But they provide for some fun action set pieces, some thought provoking moments. I also found it interesting and really enjoyed that they sparsed everything down. They gave us like a true OG style Hunger Game. The capital obviously is far from what it becomes. The Hunger Games themselves are a really basic version of what we see much later. And you get to see some of the inner workings of the buildup to the bigger, more insane games that are to come. So then, what doesn't work so well when it came to the songbirds and the snakes? Well, as I alluded to in my positives, it's just so much more heavy handed with the messaging. Those first two acts, I mean, they are really kind of just knocking you upside the head with the disdain for the poor, disdain for the district folk. All of that is just rampant here in a way that is much more obvious than we got in even, say, the first Hunger Games, where obviously the messaging is very clear, but I think they do it in more of a subtle and nuanced fashion. And then we get to that third act, and my goodness, I'm sorry, it really drags. This film is nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and you can feel it. You can feel that runtime. It's too long, and there's not enough pushing forward narratively. It feels like the first two acts are kind of like the first two movies of the OG trilogy, and then that third act is like the Mockingjay arc of this film, and it drags like those two films tend to do. And part of that is I don't think they go deep enough with the characters. Post the events of the first two acts, we just don't delve into it enough. And we get these big placard markers that indicate we're moving on to a new act of the film, which I didn't love. Let's just be honest there. But once we hit that third placket marker, it doesn't do anything interesting for me personally. It should have felt like this big tragic moment, seeing Snow's like final push to where he goes, seeing how his relationship has hit its head. It should feel like this big traumatic moment for the audience, and it just didn't. And I think that's the big problem with the film by and large is, like I said, I didn't need a President Snow origin story. I probably would have more enjoyed getting the actual Hunger Games origin than getting Snow's origin and this like revamping of the Hunger Games to what it is currently at the first movie. But how they craft Snow, he's just not an interesting enough arc overall. He's not really good to begin, and you never really feel like he's a good person throughout. He's a very self-serving person throughout this entire film, which, lays the groundwork to get to the end point. But we don't have that like tragic hero downfall by the end. He's not a great protagonist throughout. He just kind of serves as a strange character to follow because he's not really all that empathetic, not really that sympathetic, but he's also obviously one of the better, more moral people for the majority of this film. So it's just kind of hard to follow him as a protagonist in any sort of meaningful way. And I don't think the script does a good enough job of really cementing him as a good protagonist for this film. And I just don't think it did enough for the greater world of the Hunger Games, the world building, fleshing things out. It gives little Easter eggs to keep OG Hunger Games like, oh, haha, I know that name. Oh, haha, there's that bird. But ultimately, they don't do enough to really like warrant going back in time to tell this story. We get it. That's kind of it. I don't know. The rest of all of this, I didn't really need to know about him. And after watching the film, I don't really feel like this enriched my love and lore of the Hunger Games world and Pan Am all that much further than when I walked into the movie theater. And that's my big problem leaving. So ultimately, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of the Songbirds, and Snakes is a solid film. I think big fans of The Hunger Games are going to enjoy this. It's a beautifully mounted piece of work. all the craftsmanship is there and the acting is there. If you've read the book, I'm sure you're really going to enjoy this film. But if you're a casual fan, I just don't really know what this has to offer, honestly. And I still am just kind of like, I don't know that we needed this film altogether. But if you are curious about it, I think the technical achievements warrant a big screen viewing. But I kind of feel like you already know if you're going to see this Hunger Games prequel before the weekend even hits. So that was my review for The Hunger Games, The Ballad of the Songbirds and Snakes. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see this Hunger Games prequel? Let me know. Let me know all of your thoughts either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.